Week 2 is officially in the books, so we are breaking down our top waiver ads heading into Week 3 of fantasy football. Before we get into my top 10, I'm going to go through my 10 through 1 in descending order. So if the guys that I talk about first, obviously going to be lesser known guys, lesser priority guys, as opposed to the guys that I talk about at the end of this video. Make sure to double check that these players are not on your waiver wire right now because all of them are above 40% rostered in sleeper leagues. Rashid Shaheed definitely has had some great weeks so far. Excellent 10 to 20% fab bid if you guys are in need of wide receiver help. Rico Dowdle, kind of same thing. I think he's a good RB3, RB4 stash for your bench. I think that eventually he's going to continue to work into this Cowboys rotation. Bucky Irving, obviously a great upside stash. Rashad White, potentially going to miss some time. If he is actually ruled out for week 3, then he would be a higher fab priority than what I have listed for him here. And then Ty Chandler, also a good stash. Not a huge priority guy because Aaron Jones is still healthy, but definitely would be great if Aaron Jones were to go down. So let's go through my top 10 waiver ads, starting with number 10, Geno Smith. For those of you guys that are in need of quarterback play, I would spend up to, $5 of fab on him in a $100 fab budget kind of league. Geno Smith is averaging 20 fantasy points per game so far in the 2 games that he's played this year. Home for Miami this week could be a higher scoring game environment, good time of possession kind of game for the Seattle Seahawks. At Detroit next week, also potentially a high-scoring game. And then home for the New York Giants after that. Pretty easy matchup. Very, very viable QB streamer for the next 3 games. This new offense with Ryan Grubb, we really saw them air it out last week with JSN and DK Metcalf combining for 29 targets between the two of them. Metcalf is stretching the field. JSN is moving the chains, especially without Kenneth Walker for the next, game or two. It sounds like they're being extremely cautious with him. That was the report that came out yesterday. The run game is likely not going to be very effective. Zach Charbonnet is much more of a receiving back, as we've seen. Not quite as effective on the ground as Kenneth Walker has been. And the Seahawks have been a top 5 team in neutral script pass rate since the season begun. So definitely a good option for those of you guys in need of quarterback play is Geno Smith. Number 9 waiver ad for me on the week is Khalil Herbert. DeAndre Swift is averaging 2 yards per carry this year. I think the Chicago Bears are going to go look at the film, realize that they need to make some changes at some point. I don't know if it's going to happen this week. At some point, they're going to do that. And Khalil Herbert has been much more effective over the last 2 years than DeAndre Swift has been on the ground. I know he hasn't really done much yet, but he did score the touchdown on Sunday Night Football, punching in the lone touchdown for them. I expect this offense to make changes at some point. Also, too, there's the off chance that Khalil Herbert could be on the trade block for a team that has running back injuries, for example, like the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't think that's extremely likely of happening. I think he's going to stay with the Chicago Bears, but Khalil Herbert does have a chance to win out this backfield without an injury, in my opinion. I think DeAndre Swift has been really ineffective. He's getting a good workload, but Khalil Herbert could start to inch towards that workload here very soon, and Swift has also not been the most durable guy in the world either. Number 8 waiver ad for me is Braylon Allen, scored 2 touchdowns in week 2. All I really care about with Braylon Allen is how good he looks, because Breece Hall's Breece Hall. He's going to be on the field. He's going to be a dominant workhorse whenever he's healthy. But if anything were to happen to Breece Hall, Braylon Allen is easily one of the 3 or 4 best backup running backs currently in the NFL right now, and I think he would massively be a league winner if anything happened to Breece Hall. I think this offense in New York is starting to figure some things out. I think as the weeks go along, Aaron Rodgers is going to get more comfortable. Garrett Wilson should start playing better. Breece Hall, of course, is going to do his thing. You burn a bench spot all season long by rostering a guy like Braylon Allen because you're never going to know when to start this guy as long as Breece Hall is in the lineup. But I'm telling you right now, this is a absolute lottery ticket. If you have a 0 RB build and you have a guy that you can start in the short term, like Zach Charbonnet or Rico Dowdle or somebody like that, you want to burn a bench spot on a guy like Braylon Allen, because if this guy comes into big work, you are going to have a chance to absolutely outpace your league and get a mid RB2, high-end RB2, even low-end RB1 should anything happen to Breece Hall, even if it's just for a couple of games. Braylon Allen is absolutely worth burning a roster spot on because this is a total lotto ticket, just the same way Tyler Algier is a total lotto ticket in Atlanta. So number 7 waiver ad on the week here is Jaylen Tolbert. I know that Jaylen Tolbert has been certified cheeks prior to this year, but he actually had a pretty good game in week 2. He had a 6 for 82 line on 8 targets with a 2.0 yards per route run. The team talked him up all offseason as potentially a guy that could take a step. I think he is a viable pickup because the Cowboys are going to throw the ball. The offense doesn't really have a solidified number 2 behind CeeDee Lamb. Of course, Brandon Cooks had a good week 1, but Jaylen Tolbert ran more routes than him in week 2, and also Jake Ferguson is still out with the injury that he suffered to his knee in week 1. So again, Jaylen Tolbert, for those of you guys that might need a deep league kind of flex play in week 3, I do think that Jaylen Tolbert's the type of guy that you could pick up and throw into your lineup and kind of just hope for a touchdown or hope for a big play or something like that. So number 6 waiver ad for me here is Ja'Lynn Polk, and this is definitely a different type of waiver ad than Jaylen Tolbert because Ja'Lynn Polk is probably not the type of guy that you want to put in your lineup right away. Game 1 to 2, we saw a nice jump in usage. You can see it went from 62% of the routes to 69%. Also saw a nice jump in target share as well to a 14% target share. The routes were up. He catches a touchdown. This offense is still pretty stale, pretty vanilla with Jacoby Brissett running the show right now. He's basically just throwing to Hunter Henry constantly, and they're just running the ball. But the vision is here that Ja'Lynn Polk starts to figure things out as a rookie wide receiver. By week 4, week 5, week 6, he's running 90% of the team's routes. He's fully up to speed, fully acclimated. And then maybe we see Drake May take over the starting job at quarterback, come in because he hasn't had this confidence shaking, beating that some of these rookie quarterbacks are taking right now, like Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and Bo Nix, who have started from week 1. I do think that Drake May could come in right away and perform at a high level because he's been able to sit on the bench and kind of watch a veteran do his thing. And the Patriots are a competent offense, even if Drake May doesn't get on the field until week 7, week 8, week 10, or whatever it is. So Ja'Lynn Polk, to me, is a guy that you want to hold, add on your waiver wire before he becomes the hot waiver ad, because at some point, I'm telling you guys right now, Ja'Lynn Polk is going to have a 90% route rate and 7 for 110 and a touchdown. Like, that could definitely happen in week 4, week 5, week 6, and then he'll be 100% of your fab type of ad. So if you just get him on your roster now, 5-10% of your fab, hold him for as long as you want to hold him. I do believe this is the type of guy that you need to stash for a number of weeks, and he could end up being a fixture of your starting lineup as the season goes along as a rookie wide receiver. So getting into my top 5 waiver ads, and this one is a really challenging one because we're still waiting kind of reports on Joe Mixon's health. We don't even exactly know which running back is the backup here, which running back is the handcuff here, but I'm listing Dameon Pierce and Cam Akers, both as reasonable ads for you guys in need of running back talent, because the Texans running backs could be thrust in to a bigger workload should Joe Mixon miss some time. He suffered a medial ankle sprain is what they're calling it on Sunday Night Football. He did return briefly, but he also could have a lot of swelling throughout the week. It could cause him to miss a game or two because he is an older running back. Those injuries, not necessarily the easiest ones to come back from. Cam Akers was a healthy scratch in week 1, so we don't really know exactly what his role would have been if him and Dameon Pierce were on the field together. Dameon Pierce missed week 2 on Sunday Night Football with a injury as well. So we don't exactly know who the number 2 ball carrier is. We heard all offseason that Dameon Pierce was struggling. Cam Akers was looking better. They brought him in, of course, late to the process. Again, your guess is as good as mine. If you think that Dameon Pierce could recapture his rookie season for him, then go after him. If you think that Cam Akers, probably the buzz and the betting favorite, I would say, to be the number 2 back here, then go after him. For me, I would personally just go after whoever's cheaper, which to me is Dameon Pierce most likely. So if you can get one of these guys for 0 to 5% of your fab, and that would be Dameon Pierce, whereas Cam Akers is probably going to be 5 to 15% of your fab in most leagues, I would rather just go after Dameon Pierce and kind of see what happens, because like I said, in week 1, he was actually, Cam Akers was actually a healthy scratch. So it looks like Dameon Pierce, to me, is the guy that you need to have, and we didn't get any information or clarity on what this backfield split would have looked like had Dameon Pierce played on Sunday Night Football. So for me, I'm going after Dameon Pierce because he's the cheaper option, but I do think Cam Akers is a viable ad as well. Now let's get into Quintin Johnson, and I can't believe I'm talking about Quintin Johnson right now, but don't look now, but he's actually playing at a pretty high level. He's playing pretty well. Quintin Johnson had 2 touchdowns this past week, and it's not that I'm just chasing those touchdowns. I'm actually looking at the underlying metrics here and kind of determining that Quintin Johnson is playing like a lot better than he played as a rookie. Quintin Johnson could be a viable contributor going forward. Going into the season, we heard all offseason that it was Josh Palmer and Ladd McConkey as the top 2 receivers on this team in terms of route participation, in terms of what we expected target-wise. Well, don't look now, but Quintin Johnson has a 25% target share on the season, had a 32% target target share last week and a 20% target share in week 1. So with Quintin Johnson, you're looking at a guy who was a raw rookie coming into the NFL, looks to be taking a step in year 2, especially looking at how much better this coaching staff looks than the previous regime with Brandon Staley. Quintin Johnson has a 72.5 PFF receiving grade. That is top 24 among wide receivers. He has 2.07 yards per route run. Also top 24 among wide receivers. Quintin Johnson could actually be a thing. Like, I love Ladd McConkey. I think he's eventually going to take over the number 1 role here. But as of right now, Quintin Johnson is the number 1 receiver for this team. Number 1 receiver for Justin Herbert. So number 4 as my waiver ad right now could be too low if we look back at this 5-10 weeks from now if Quintin Johnson has a breakout season. So again, if you need wide receiver talent, I do think this is one of the premier ads that you can go after and get a viable flex play, a viable wide receiver 4 upside swing. It's very possible that Quintin Johnson becomes Quintin Johnson again and becomes useless. But as of right now, the numbers are trending in a positive direction. He's running the most routes on the team, getting the most targets on the team for Justin Herbert. So that is worth a 5, 10, 15, even 20% fab bid for those of you guys in need of wide receiver help. Number 3 on this list is Josh Downs, and I'm absolutely petty enough to put Josh Downs ahead of Quintin Johnson because I had him ahead of Quintin Johnson entering the 2023 draft. But Josh Downs is a better player than Quintin Johnson, so that's why I have it that way. If you look at Josh Downs' reception perception numbers from his rookie season, he separated at an extremely high level, and he reportedly was having a monster training camp before suffering the injury that he suffered in the middle of August. He had a high ankle sprain during, I believe, the preseason game or training camp. They've been patient with him. It's been 6 weeks since he suffered that injury once we get to week 3's game, and Anthony Richardson desperately needs someone who can get open consistently and move the chains because Anthony Richardson cannot hit layups right now. And I think part of the reason for that is because A.D. Mitchell's a deep threat. Alec Pierce is a deep threat. Michael Pittman is not playing at a high level. If Josh Downs can get open on these curl routes, get open on these slant routes, he could end up being a PPR target monster for Anthony Richardson. And given Josh Downs' pedigree as a prospect and what he did as a rookie as far as his separation skills, I do think that he has a chance to be the number 1 receiver in this offense, which is why I would be willing to spend, again, 10, 15, 20% of my fab on Josh Downs should he be available in your league, because similar to Jaylen Polk, I do think that a week from now, 2 weeks from now, this could end up being a 50 to 100% of your fab type of ad after he has an 11 for 121 and a touchdown type of performance. Get ahead of those numbers. Josh Downs needs to be rostered for those of you guys that need wide receiver help. Number 2 waiver ad for me on this week, and this is a pretty good week of waivers if I'm being honest, is Hunter Henry. Hunter Henry had a dominant week in week 2. He had a 48% target share for Jacoby Brissett and a 30% target share overall on the season so far. There's people out there that need tight ends. There's not a lot of tight end production that is paying off right now. For those of you guys that drafted David Njoku and Jake Ferguson, they're out with injuries right now. All these other tight ends, Kincaid and Pitts and all these dudes, they're not performing at the level that we want them to. So I would imagine there's a lot of you guys out there watching this that need a tight end upgrade. Through 2 weeks, Jacoby Brissett has looked Hunter Henry's way for a 30% target share. That is a significant amount of targets. 80% route share for a tight end is also an elite number. And he is currently the number 1 receiver for his team. I get it's a run-heavy offense. I get they're not really good. But what happens if Drake May takes over and elevates this offense? Hunter Henry running an 80% route participation for a quarterback who could end up having a C.J. Stroud caliber rookie season. And again, I know we haven't seen a whole lot of Drake May. That's just an upside case. Worst case scenario, Jacoby Brissett starts for a number of weeks still, and he's just a PPR kind of gobble up the targets type of dude. Best case scenario, like I said, Drake May comes in, elevates this offense, and Hunter Henry could be a feature part of it. So definitely go out and add him 10, 20% of your fab budget. If you're in need of tight ends, I'm personally going to be putting in claims on him because I do have David Njoku in my home league. I'm sure a lot of you guys do have guys like that who you drafted thinking they were going to be great. Dallas Goedert, David Njoku, Jake Ferguson, guys like that. And you probably need tight end production to replace those guys. Evan Ingram probably going to be out for a couple of weeks now as well. So the tight end position, definitely one that is in demand, and Hunter Henry should be widely available in most leagues. My number 1 waiver ad on the week, and again, I'm saying this with a little bit of trepidation, is the Kansas City Chiefs backfield, because I do not know which guy to go after right now. I do not know if Carson Steele's going to end up being the guy you need. Samaje Perine's going to be the guy you need. They just brought in Kareem Hunt for a visit yesterday. Hasn't been officially signed there, but he also could be the guy that you need. Here's what's going to happen. Carson Steele is going to be the early down guy. At least that's the way I'm looking at it right now. He's going to be the early down guy, and that is valuable in the Kansas City Chiefs offense because they're going to be in the red zone a lot. They're going to potentially score touchdowns. Short down and distance-wise, I think Carson Steele would get the goal line work as well, but Samaje Perine is going to be the third down back, and when they haven't had a good backfield, we've seen that the third down back, ergo Jerick McKinnon role from previous years, has actually been quite valuable. So Samaje Perine is also a viable pickup this week. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is eligible to return off the non-football injury list. He's dealing with some PTSD and some mental health stuff in a couple of weeks as well. So maybe he's a factor in this backfield. Kareem Hunt, brought in for a visit. Maybe he's a factor in this backfield. Again, all this points to, for me, is don't overspend on this backfield. If you want to go after Carson Steele with 10% of your fab or 15% of your fab, if you're absolutely desperate, that's fine. If you want to spend 5 to 10% of your fab on Samaje Perine, that's fine. Do not blow 40% of your fab on this backfield because there's a very good chance we have a committee approach that we don't know who to start. These guys are ranked in RB3 territory for us going forward. Do not blow 40 to 50% of your fab on this backfield because, in my opinion, we're going to get better waiver ads in the next coming weeks than these guys. So while I think this is a good week of waivers in general across the board through my top 10, at the top, there's not a J.K. Dobbins of last week. There's not a Jordan Mason of last week. There's not a guy that you need to blow a lot of fab budget on. There's just a lot of solid ads that can contribute for your fantasy rosters, and this Chiefs backfield is no exception to that rule. So if you have any waiver questions, leave them down below. As I mentioned, if I have a guy 10 and I have a guy 7, I would pick up the guy who I have 7 over the guy that I have 10. And of course, positional stuff and positional needs are going to matter for your individual fantasy team. So leave any comments down below. Leave a like down below if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe to the channel if you are new around here. We will be bringing you guys some rest of season rankings talk later today, so stay tuned for that. Follow us over on TikTok. I'll be doing a breakdown of the waiver wire over there as well. And also, too, if you want access to all of our rest of season rankings, all of our weekly rankings, head on over to flockfantasy.com. Use the promo code FSE when you sign up, and also get a 7-day free trial, 30% off, and 6 months for free when you sign up annually. Hit the link down below in the description to ask us any fantasy questions, trade questions, start-sit questions. We answer those on our live stream, so definitely check out all that stuff linked down below in the description. But with that being said, peace out. We'll talk to you soon.